What makes a villain truly terrifying? Is it their power, their cruelty, or the unshakable conviction that they're doing the right thing? Here's how two of animation's most twisted villains justified their lust and evil, starting with the one who believed he was doing God's work. To Judge Claude Frollo, cruelty is justice, violence is mercy, and genocide is divine will. This last part is the scariest thing about Frollo, because when you believe your actions are sanctioned by something greater, when you truly think you're doing God's work, there's no limit to what you can justify.
This is an unholy demon. I'm sending it back to hell where it belongs.
This is what makes Frollo one of the most terrifying villains Disney has ever created. Dude doesn't care about vengeance or treasure. Neither is he chasing all the magic in the world. What he seeks is more terrifying, and that's purity. He wants to wipe out an entire race, and he sees himself as the only one righteous enough to pull it off.
Bring these gypsy vermin to the Palace of Justice.
Frollo begins The Hunchback of Notre Dame as a man of the cloth, a religious authority, clad in a black robe, astride a black fearsome horse. But what immediately sets him apart is the contradiction between his position and his actions. Within minutes of his introduction, he kills a woman in cold blood. He didn't do it in defense or in a fit of rage, but calmly, as if she were a piece of filth he was ordered to dispose of.
I am guiltless. She ran, I pursued.
And when he realizes the woman was protecting her child, a deformed baby, Frollo prepares to drown it in a well. Let's pause there. This dude is crazy because in that moment, he showed his evil, his ignorance, and his excessive need for control. Frollo sees deformity as a moral failing. And what do you do about moral failings? Well, according to him, you must punish it, or just to be quick, you have it erased. And that's what he was about to do to that poor child until the archdeacon intervened.
"Stop!" cried the archdeacon.
He's the only reason the baby is spared. But even in penance, Frollo doesn't show growth or humility. He takes the child in, not out of compassion, but out of forced obligation and the fear of the eyes of Notre Dame. He went ahead to name the child Quasimodo, which translates to half-formed, and subsequently locks Quasi in a tower, isolating him from the world. Oh yeah, and then he just brainwashes him into believing he is unworthy of freedom, love, or connection.
But remember, Quasimodo, this is your sanctuary.
Totally normal stuff. The first example of a recurring theme with Frollo is controlling others under the guise of protection. But it gets worse. To understand Frollo, you have to understand his relationship to religion. He believes he should speak for God and enforce his divine law. Psychologically, Frollo exhibits traits of moral absolutism. In this worldview, the world is clearly divided into good and evil, sin and virtue, purity and corruption. This is the lens through which Frollo views the entire universe, and in his eyes, he is the purest man in it. This is why when he begins to experience lust, especially for Esmeralda, it fractures his identity.
What are you doing?
Because if he is pure, then why is he drawn to sin? Why is he tempted? The simple answer would be because he's human. But to Frollo, there's no room for weakness in virtue. So he arrives at a horrifying conclusion. If the temptation exists, then the source of the temptation must be destroyed.
Mark my words, you will pay for this insolence.
This logic is fully realized in his most famous scene, Hellfire.
Like fire, hellfire.
In many ways, Hellfire is one of Disney's best renditions. It's a prayer, a confession, and a threat. Frollo uses this song to justify his lust. Instead of seeing it as a human impulse, he sees it as a sin. Not just immoral, but impure, degrading, and offensive to God. And because he believes himself to be a righteous man, a man of God, as he calls himself, he can't accept that those lustful desires are coming from within him. So he shifts the blame.
You I am a righteous man.
In his mind, Esmeralda becomes the source of his lust, not its object. He convinces himself that she is a temptress, an agent of the devil who has bewitched him, corrupted his moral purity, and tried to drag his soul to hell. He frames his obsession with Esmeralda as a spiritual battle, as though he's being tested by God. He tells himself that he is still holy, still righteous, and that the real sin is Esmeralda's beauty, her presence, her refusal to submit. Frollo kneels in front of flames, surrounded by hooded figures, faceless judges, imploring him to accept mea culpa, which means that he should acknowledge his faults, but he doesn't.
It's not my fault. I'm not to blame.
Then he demands that God either deliver her to him or condemn her to hell.
And let her taste the fires of hell. Let her be mine and mine alone.
It's a psychological defense mechanism, a blend of repression, projection, and religious absolutism, all twisted into a self-serving theology where he can be both the executioner and the martyr. And that's what makes it so horrifying. He doesn't just feel lust, he turns it into moral ammunition. The Hellfire song is also an artistic masterstroke. The flames that surround him aren't just visual metaphors, they represent the burning contradictions inside him. Lust and shame, power and helplessness. He's literally being consumed by the thing he cannot admit, that he is not pure. But rather than confront that truth, he doubles down. He chooses to destroy the object of his desire instead of questioning the righteousness of his worldview. That's when Frollo shifts from a tyrant to a fanatic, and fanaticism is where ideology becomes violence. Beyond the personal, Frollo is also a case study in authoritarian psychology, something that was peculiar during the Second World War. Similarly, Frollo is obsessed with cleansing, correcting, reforming, or worse, eliminating. This plays out in how he enforces the law, wherein he punishes people for who they are. He declares an entire ethnic group, the Romani, to be evil, untrustworthy, and a threat to Paris.
Look, Captain, gypsies. The gypsies live outside the normal order.
He orders homes to be burned, people to be rounded up,
Take them away.
executions to be carried out, all in the name of order. There's a concept in political philosophy known as the Benality of Evil, coined by Hannah Arendt during the trial of Nazi official Adolf Eichmann. She argued that some of history's worst crimes weren't committed by monsters, but by bureaucrats, people who believed they were simply doing their job. Frollo is the animated embodiment of this idea. He calmly signs orders, gives speeches, and watches the city burn, believing with full conviction that Paris will thank him for it. Unfortunately, cleansing Paris was not the only way he portrayed his cruelty. Frollo's relationship with Quasimodo is another chilling detail, and this is because it shows how evil sustains itself through manipulation. He raises Quasimodo with lies, emotional abuse, and isolation. He doesn't just tell him the world is dangerous, he tells him he deserves to be locked away, that his ugliness is a reflection of his soul.
You are deformed.
I am deformed.
And you are ugly.
And I am ugly.
This is how Frollo maintains power, not with brute force, but with mental domination. He lies that Quasi's mother abandoned him, and even when Quasimodo begins to question the world outside, Frollo gaslights him.
It's I alone whom you can trust in this whole city.
Notice the phrasing? That kind of messaging breaks a person down over time, and again, Frollo calls it protection.
I am your only friend.
He convinces himself that raising Quasimodo in a cage is an act of mercy, because in his warped moral framework, truth and kindness are mutually exclusive. By the end of the film, Frollo is no longer even pretending to be merciful. When Esmeralda rejects him, he tries to burn her alive.
Choose me or the fire.
And when Quasimodo finally stands up to him, Frollo draws his sword.
Esmeralda.
She lives.
No!
At this point, the mask has fallen, but in Frollo's mind, he is still right, still righteous, even as he raises his sword and utters his final words.
And he shall smite the wicked and plunge them into the fiery.
But then, in poetic irony, he falls to his death into literal fire. It's thematic closure. The man who believed he was carrying out divine judgment suffers divine judgment himself. But if Frollo is evil disguised as virtue, Jafar is evil on another level, maybe even the worst kind. There's no prayer in Jafar's mind. He doesn't quote scripture or appeal to virtue. He doesn't want to purify the world. There's no higher calling, only one unshakable truth. He deserves power, especially the one the lamp provides.
Bring me the lamp. The rest of the treasure is yours, but the lamp is mine.
When anyone hears that, they would immediately assume that this tall, angular man, speaking with a hypnotic cadence, owns a lamp that needs retrieving. He claims ownership with so much intensity that you would call this lamp Jafar's. This is what makes him dangerous. His sense of entitlement is off the roof, and it is what fuels everything he does. He's chasing power, a title, and a crown he believes is his birthright. How he walks, talks, and acts portrays this sense of entitlement. Even his loud and sarcastic sidekick parrot, Iago, complements his prideful and domineering personality.
Jeez, where'd you dig this bozo up?
But while his aesthetic screams villain, his actual philosophy is rooted in something disturbingly familiar: the belief that magic and ambition should naturally lead to power. Jafar is introduced as a calculating political operative, the royal vizier of Agrabah. From the very first scene, we learn something crucial about him. He already has immense influence, but he doesn't see it that way. To him, power is binary. You either have all of it or none at all. Hence, he sees himself as undervalued, a genius forced to serve fools, a rightful king trapped in a servant's robes.
Jafar, my most trusted advisor, I am in desperate need of your wisdom.
In Jafar's mind, the natural order has been violated. Therefore, correcting it by force, deception, or magic isn't wrong, it's justice. Psychologists describe this as malignant entitlement, when someone believes their unmet desires are a form of injustice, and any means to correct that injustice is fair game. This is a form of grandiose narcissism, a psychological profile marked by an inflated sense of self-importance, constant fantasies of unlimited power and brilliance, and a lack of empathy that allows for the exploitation of others without remorse.
I will be Sultan, not that addle-pated twit.
But what makes Jafar especially dangerous is that his narcissism doesn't stay political. It becomes supernatural. The fact that he knows a bit of magic drives him to become the very axis around which the universe spins. He doesn't manipulate people by earning their trust, he does it by warping their senses. For Jafar, magic is proof. Proof that he's superior, that he was always meant to rule. He weaponizes it, and he justifies his every step deeper into darkness by believing that because he can do these things, he should be omnipotent. Think about how early the film starts showing us this. He uses his hypnotic serpent staff to control the Sultan, a symbol of royalty, literally bowing to Jafar's will.
The diamond.
Here, Jafar.
Then he uses the same magic to identify the diamond in the rough, aka Aladdin.
Yes, there he is.
However, this is where he fails to see another flaw in himself. The Cave of Wonders only opens to someone it deems a diamond in the rough, a person who appears insignificant but is truly worthy. This is a devastating blow to Jafar's ego. Despite all his cunning, the universe itself doesn't see him as worthy. Instead of reevaluating himself, he doubles down. This is cognitive dissonance in action. Jafar's identity is so wrapped in the belief that he deserves power, he can't allow this rejection to mean anything real. So, what does he do? He attempts to steal worthiness. He tries to control the cave. He tries to cheat the system, to bypass worthiness because he doesn't believe in earning power. He believes it should have been his from the beginning. Therefore, he uses Aladdin, the diamond in the rough. But to get him, he had to use cunning yet again, disguising himself as an old prisoner.
So why would you share all this wonderful treasure with me?
I need a young pair of legs and a strong back to go in after it.
Then he tries to kill Aladdin in the moment he gets the lamp, but fate, or Abu, intervenes.
Your eternal reward.
This moment is important. Jafar shows once again that he would do anything to get what is rightfully his, and that included killing even the one who helps him out. Luckily, karma visits him immediately.
Hey, what is it? No!
This loss should have made him question himself, but he doesn't. Instead, he simply doubles down again. Back in Agrabah, Jafar resumes his old tricks with Iago, this time offering him a cunning idea.
I love the way your foul little mind works.
With no lamp in hand, he manipulates with law and mind control. He invokes an obscure rule that would allow him to marry Jasmine and become Sultan by proxy. Compared to Frollo's tortured and repressed obsession, Jafar's lust is colder, more calculated, and rooted in power. He doesn't burn with desire like Frollo. Instead, he sees Jasmine and her beauty as one more asset to possess, one more symbol of his entitlement.
Marry the princess, all right? And you become the sultan.
The disturbing part is not just that he wants her, it's how he frames that desire. In his mind, Jasmine isn't a person. She's a trophy, the final piece of legitimacy that would cement his rule and stroke his ego. And something else. It's disgusting to even think about Jafar and Jasmine together, considering how old the creep is. The Sultan even knows this.
But you're so old.
So when he refuses, Jafar doesn't argue. He simply hypnotizes him with his iconic serpent staff again.
A princess will marry me.
Princess will marry.
It's a recurring theme with Jafar. If people won't see his brilliance willingly, he'll make them. But just as he begins to tighten his grip, a new threat appears.
I'm afraid, Prince Abubu. Whatever.
Aladdin's disguise threatens everything. Jasmine is drawn to this outsider, and Jafar immediately senses something is off. Why? Because this wasn't part of the story he was writing in his head, the one where he earns Jasmine. He becomes Sultan, and he is finally recognized. Jafar's rage is personal. He feels robbed, and when he uncovers Aladdin's true identity, he doesn't hesitate. He tries to have him killed again. But Aladdin escapes and exposes Jafar's manipulation, shattering his staff in front of the Sultan.
Father, what's wrong with you?
I know what's wrong.
Once again, Jafar's version of the world is denied, and once again, he refuses to accept it. So he escalates. He steals the lamp outright, and this time, nothing is left to subtlety. His first wish is to become Sultan, a direct grab at legitimacy, because in his mind, if he can force people to see him as ruler, maybe that will finally make it true. He forces Jasmine and her father to bow. He turns the palace into a twisted version of itself, replacing beauty with arrogance. And yet, something's still missing. People still resist him. Jasmine defies him. Aladdin returns. That's when Jafar realizes being Sultan doesn't grant true control. Power handed to you can be taken away. So he makes his second wish.
I wish to be the most powerful sorcerer in the world!
This moment marks a psychological transformation. Up until now, Jafar used magic to manipulate. Now, he uses it to dominate. He imprisons those who defy him. He transforms reality itself. He becomes a godlike force. He doesn't just want people to obey, he wants them to submit to fear, to know they are beneath him.
Stop it! Jafar, leave him alone!
Here, Jafar's lust comes full circle, as a perverted weirdo with a fetish for torture. He doesn't just imprison Jasmine, he changes her clothes, chains her at his side, and attempts to force her to be affectionate toward him in front of others.
A beauty such as yourself should be on the arm of the most powerful man in the world.
He doesn't woo her, doesn't try to earn her love. He commands it.
I wish Jasmine to fall desperately in love with me.
In Jafar's twisted worldview, love and desire are not emotional connections. They are things to be taken. This perfectly encapsulates his mindset: silence, submission, and objectification. For Jafar, that is the ideal partner. Someone beautiful, silent, obedient, a living accessory to his reign. And for a while, he thinks he finally got it. But Aladdin comes to the rescue and challenges him again. Yet Jafar doesn't hesitate to raise the stakes once more. He transforms into a massive serpent, coiling around the street rat in a display of raw power and cruelty. However, Aladdin still wins, not through strength, but through psychology. He appeals to Jafar's one fatal flaw: his need to be the greatest.
Face it, Jafar! You're still just second best!
Aladdin tricks him into making his final wish.
I wish to be an all-powerful genie!
It works. Jafar becomes a being of limitless cosmic power and is instantly trapped in a lamp. Why? Because genies, by nature, must serve others. And in his obsession with domination, Jafar overlooked the price of omnipotence, eternal servitude.
Cosmic powers!
Come on, you're the genie! I know!
This is where philosophy and irony collide. Jafar's downfall is not just poetic, it's structural. He sought freedom through power, but the more power he claimed, the more enslaved he became. To his desires, to his narrative, and finally, to the very rules he tried to cheat. Jafar's evil is not cloaked in righteousness like Frollo's. He never pretends to serve a higher cause, but in a way that makes him even more dangerous, because he doesn't seek moral justification, he seeks moral domination. In his worldview, if it's good for Jafar, then it's good, period. There is no higher authority, no moral compass, no sense of empathy. And that's what makes him terrifying, because evil doesn't need to wear a white robe and quote scripture to be dangerous. Sometimes it wears a crown of self-importance and calls itself destiny. Sometimes it believes so strongly that it deserves everything, it's willing to destroy everything and everyone to get it. That said, what happens when two villains with nothing in common on the surface follow different paths and arrive at the same terrifying destination? Let's step back and see what makes Frollo and Jafar so alike and why their brand of evil is more dangerous than we ever realized. Across Disney's animated canon, few villains cast shadows as long or as disturbing as Frollo and Jafar. Not because of the magic they wield or the violence they commit, but because of why they commit it. On the surface, these two couldn't be more different. Frollo is a man of faith. Jafar is a man of ambition. Frollo acts in the name of God and purity. Jafar acts in the name of destiny and desire. One wraps his evil in scripture, the other in logic. One demands obedience in the name of salvation, the other demands power in the name of superiority. But dig deeper and the similarities become chillingly clear. Both men believe the world is broken, and both believe they are the ones chosen to fix it. Frollo thinks his will is God's will. Jafar thinks his desire is destiny. And in both cases, that belief justifies everything: torture, manipulation, murder. You name it. They don't hesitate, because in their minds, they're not committing evil, they're correcting it. This is where the danger lies, not in the fire or the sorcery, but in the justification. Villains like Frollo and Jafar don't see themselves as villains, but as visionaries, as restorers of order, as victims of a system too blind to recognize their importance. And that belief, that unshakable sense of entitlement, righteousness, and destiny is what turns ambition into obsession and obsession into horror. The world must be remade, and anyone who stands in the way is either sinful or expendable. And so, in the end, we come full circle. Frollo and Jafar are philosophically committed to a version of reality where they are always right. And that's what makes them terrifying, because when evil feels righteous, it acts without guilt. escalates without pause and burns everything in its path with the unshakable belief that it's doing the right thing. That is how to justify evil, and it's what makes Frollo and Jafar Disney's most unforgettable villains. But once you've built a villain this powerful, this convincing, how do you then destroy them in a way that actually leaves an impact? This video right here helps us with that.